And we are live. Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to season 3, segment 1 of our Little Leaders Career Exploration Series. We are focusing on education tonight. I'm really excited because we have a heavy hitting lineup of professionals and educators, and I can't wait for you to hear just how professional and deeply entrenched in their work that they are. So get your questions ready. Grab the kids closest to you, call a few to sit down, just like that Michael Jackson gifts, eat popcorn together, whatever y'all gonna do, but tune in. Parents, I really do think if you have an educator in the making, tonight is gonna help you really see some of the things that you should be looking for, things that you can, kind of weed out. So just keep that in mind. I have my co-host. This is one of my favorite girls, my chocolate drop, Jordan. And Jordan is going to share our mission statement shortly. And you ready, girl?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, go ahead.
The mission statement of Little Hands Big Hearts Little People Service Organization is to develop little people into servant leaders who think beyond themselves for the greater good through explicit and intentional opportunities for character development, selfless service to others, and a community-based volunteering.
Thank you. Jordan, you can tell them what grade you're in also.
I'm in ninth grade.
She's a ninth grader and she's a part of our Future Forward Servant Leadership Development Program. She is such an awesome example of servant leadership. That same smile. We served yesterday the unhomed, the transient of our community, and she was service with a smile the whole time, helping people to get clothing, get food, and everything. So I love having her be a part. Thank you for joining. She didn't want to. I kind of voluntold her, but she's doing excellent so far, and I know she's going to continue to do excellent. So, with that, I would love to introduce our panelists, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and this is the order that will go in. We have Mr. Lois, we have Mr. Lois Smith, then we'll go with Charmaine Jennings, Walter Jennings, Nikki Luckett, Rob Myers, Dr. Tasha Myers, Coach Valerie Wilson, and Courtney Allen, in that order. Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being a part of this. And I'm going to be brief because I don't want to take any time away from the rest of the panelists. I am retired, but when I retired, I was at a vice president level at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. I served in that capacity for about 10 years. And I developed an Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at the university. But before I was moved into that office, I was a vice president in the area of student affairs at the university. So I'll have a lot more to say about that later. But I also am a professional licensed psychotherapist. So I kept that job just in case the president at the university ever decided to not continue my contract. So I'm glad to be of service to you, and so welcome.
Greetings. My name is Charmaine Jennings. Again, thankful to be here. I am a veteran education educator, been in the field for about 26 years. I'm thankful that for the past 6 years, I've been able to work for a network who supports about 28 schools across 6 different states. We support scholars who are K-12 and the vocational career and technical level as well. And we mainly support scholars and who are marginalized and who pretty much are considered below the federal poverty level, and just supporting them with crisis intervention supports, trauma supports for training the teachers and the leaders in the building. So I'm super thankful to be here today.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you again, Dr. Anthony, for the invitation. My name is Walter Jennings. I currently serve as the Director of Student Success Initiatives for an organization called Helios Education Foundation. I've spent over 20 years in supplemental support of educational institutions, first as a member of the University of South Florida Foundation for a number of years, and then now with Helios, which is a community foundation. And it's essentially what we do is to provide support for educational systems in and around the state of Florida. I am responsible for helping to identify and cultivate strategic partnerships and also community investments. So really excited about the conversation today.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Nikki Luckett. I've been in education for about 26 years, starting as a kindergarten teacher all the way up through college. I have also had a role in a DEI office as well, like Mrs. Smith. Currently, I serve as the Associate Director for the USF Foundation Affinity Program. So we provide scholarships for our Black and Latino students. And what I do is make sure that they have wraparound services. They're using the resources that they have on campus to make them successful, and also making sure that they are developing their professional and career skills so that they're ready for their careers when they graduate college.
Good evening, everyone. I am Rob Myers. I am the Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management at Livingstone College. And that lofty title means is that admissions, orientation, and open houses are under my purview. So Livingstone College is a private, historically Black institution in North Carolina, Salisbury, North Carolina. I'm also a graduate of South Florida. So University of South Florida I have a special place in my heart. So I love hearing all the connections to USF. So go Bulls. And I will let Dr. Myers introduce herself. She's also my wife.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. As it shows, my name is Dr. Tasha Marie Myers. I currently serve as the Director of Special Projects for Leadership and Engagement in the Division of Campus Life at Wake Forest University. I've worked in higher ed for over the last 15 years, and it's really exciting to be able to do this. Starting out as a girl from Fort Pierce, Florida, I didn't know anything about what it meant to work in higher ed. And it was from the transformative experiences and involvement that I had at University of South Florida, again, go Bulls, that really opened the door for me in this career, in this line of work. And I'm excited to talk more about that as we go through the questions this evening.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here. My name is Coach Valerie Wilson. I just came out of the classroom as an 18-and-a-half-year veteran educator, worked in middle school and high school as a math teacher and math interventionist. I stepped out to start working for Georgia Public Broadcasting as an education outreach specialist. So I go around the state of Georgia and talk to teachers about our free resources and our free professional learning. Outside of my main vocation, I have got passions that have led me to teen life coaching, as well as young adults. I've also been able to be an international TEDx speaker. I did that in Caledon, Canada. And I am currently adding to that list, audiobook narrator and producer.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Courtney Allen, and I too have been in education for over 25 years. Currently, I serve as the Associate Director for Alumni Engagement at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University here in Daytona Beach, Florida. My experience in education has included middle and high school counselor, as well as working in higher education, coordinating and working with our dual enroll students and teaching as an adjunct in the first year experience. I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you all for sharing. So we're going to jump right into our questions because we don't have a lot of time together and we have a really big panel. I want to hear everybody's responses, okay? So first question, what were some of the hobbies that you engaged in as a child that contributed to you becoming an educator in the capacity that you're serving now or in previous capacities? And anyone feel free to jump in. Just take yourself off mute, but come on, jump on in to this question, this conversation.
I'll jump in. I did not know I was going to be in education when I was growing up. However, I do remember my relatives giving me stories later on about how I would take my little cousins and I had a little chalkboard that my parents gave me as like a little desk. It transformed, and I would take my cousins and I would make them have spelling tests and I would teach them lessons with my little chalkboard. And so eventually, after I picked the wrong major in college, I found that out, almost a year from graduating. I decided this is not where I'm supposed to be. God is leading me somewhere else. I am great with children. Let me try the education route.
For me, it was definitely being in the marching band, middle school and high school, as well as being in the church choir. So music was huge, and everyone chipped in to teach. And even in my home, my parents were big teachers. Everyone had to learn how to do everything. I had a lot of siblings, so for me, it was really music turned on a lot of switches in my brain. I struggled with reading, but being in these group performing arts models, it really, you had to, whatever you learned, you taught someone else, and you were expected to be contagious.
So for me, I was that young girl who was smart, who talked a lot. So everybody told me I was supposed to be a lawyer. So from a young age, I just knew that I was going to be a lawyer. I knew I was going to be a lawyer. And then once I started excelling in math in high school, I'm like, oh, this is really great. I started tutoring my friends and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a math teacher. And then I was like, but I really still like law. And I was just like, oh, well, maybe I'll be a law teacher. And I'm like, again, you have to go through the whole process to be a lawyer before you can do that. But what it did do is give me the opportunity to think more forward thinking about how I could use the skills that I had and what everyone kind of had told me and picked up on. And it wasn't until I was on the college campus, and that same respect that peers had for me in high school, that I also got from the women that lived in my residence hall that elected me as mayor of my floor. And so getting involved was really huge. And that same curious girl who talked a lot was bold enough to ask the person who was the grown up in the room, well, how did you get this job? And that is what led me to being able to say that, yeah, this is what I want to do.
So for me, I was one of those weird kids who actually loved school, and not just the classroom itself, but the nuts and bolts of what it took to run a school. And then coupling that with the idea of, I thought I was going to be a corporate recruiter, because I've always had this knack for pulling out special gifts and talents out of people. So that skill set is what led me to enrollment management and admissions, being able to talk to people, making sure that they find the right fit. I loved my experience at South Florida, but one of the things I always talk about is like, that was a school with 40,000 students. I never thought about seeing myself at a smaller institution. I thought I needed the big and the flash. But when I think about some of the things that I missed, or some of the opportunities that I was scared to take, it was because the school was so big. So I really try to hone in on that when I'm talking to students about, making sure they pick the right place and the right choice. And so those are the things that kind of led me to specifically enrollment management and admissions. I've always, when I thought about I said I had a mid-20s crisis. People talk about midlife crisis, but when I thought about my favorite time, it was college. So I was like, I want college to be my career, and whatever that means. And so that's what I did. I made college my lifetime career.
So full disclosure, I have never taught in the classroom or served as an administrator. And part of the reason why I share that is because when most people think of education, that's the first thing that they think of. However, like most people, I would assume I was really not only highly influenced by the teachers and administrators along my education path, but also my mother was as well. And so I was really pleasantly surprised that there were other opportunities in education that didn't necessarily of necessarily being on the front line of working directly with students. Not that I was averse to it, but I believe you have to have the head, the heart, and the stomach. And so in order to do that, and I've been always missing the stomach, but I was pleasantly surprised that there were opportunities to help cultivate relationships. When you talk to most educators, they will tell you that 3 of the things that they really need to support them in their work is support from support from families, support from communities, and support from government. And so all of those things are really an integral part of what I was able to kind of find my niche in when it comes to education, and really helping to develop those external partnerships that really lead to the resources and support that our students and our teachers need.
I had some experiences similar to a lot of what you said. Like, I grew up in church, so being in youth ministry, And, working with children. Even after I was a youth, I became a youth leader, and I read a lot, and my grandparents said I asked a lot of questions. And so back then we didn't call it critical thinking, right? So I think after serving in a capacity like in youth ministry, I had an opportunity to work at a daycare. And I think that is what really solidified that I wanted to be a teacher, along with, I was the family babysitter too. So I've just always been around children, loved children, and that really cultivated my life as an educator, I think.
Let me take you off mute. Hold on.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
I'm sorry about that. I didn't intend to be in education, but I grew up in a very poor family. And so when we didn't go on vacations, I hardly ever left my city. And so I'll date myself when I say I was a voracious reader. So I would travel in my mind by reading books. And so there was a thing called a bookmobile that would drive out into the county. And every Tuesday and Thursday, when it would come to the school, I'd hop on my bike with a little basket on the front, go to the bookmobile, fill it up with books, read them during that week, and then wait for the bookmobile to come back the next day. So I traveled in my mind to places that I never would have been able to go. Now, because of that, I think another thing that helped me to become a professional counselor, I was able to give advice to a lot of people at my school and other places. So people came to me a lot. So I end up being a professional counselor. And just like Nikki, I learned the art of standing up and presenting from church and being in a youth group and learning how to present from that. So another hobby that I do have, I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm a professional calligrapher. Learned that from the art. And that is not with the regular pen. That's the inkwell and the quill and the parchment paper. That's a true calligrapher.
I love that. Jordan's going to ask the next question, but I wanted to highlight something that Walter said, that there are so many, the purpose of this is for you to see the myriad of career paths that you can take within a certain industry. So you have people who have never been in the classroom, but they're still impacting lives. They're impacting families and causing children who may not have had a trajectory to go to college to end up in college, right? So you can just take that information tonight and think about the children that you have in your immediate vicinity, the children that you're connected to. You don't know if you are connected to the next educator. So just take everything that's being said and begin to hone in and tap in. All right, Jordan, you ready? Go ahead.
What communication skills are required to effectively function as an educator?
All right. So we're talking about communication. Jump on in. Calligraphy.
I'm going to communication skills. And if any of you are taking notes, I want you to jot this down. And it's called the 7-38-55 rule. 7-38-55 rule. And what that means is 7% of communication is the words that you use. 38% of your communication is the tone of your voice. And 55% of communication is your body language. And all of that is involved in communication. So only about 93% of communication is nonverbal. Only 7% is verbal. People read your eyes, the tone of your voice, they read your body language. So that's a key thing to keep in mind when we're talking about communication skills as an administrator. It is key. So take the time, if you would, and look that up, the 7-38-55 rule.
So I'll even go in another direction with that. I think that was really great information when it comes to communication. But one of the things that I learned in my major, public and cultural communication, is really not only when people think about communication, they think about interpersonal communication as far as talking to one another, or even now understanding that there are different modes of communication. So how you text your friends is not the same way you email your instructors, right? Or the way that you speak with your family and friends is not the same way that you might speak to a potential employer. But one of the things that I really loved in the coursework is really understanding the communication that happens in the TV that we watch, in the books that we read, and understanding the style, the music that we listen to, and all of these things are forms of communication and how they impact not only our vocabulary, but they impact our point of view in the world, and they impact the ability for us to see ourselves outside of our current situation. And so even when I think to the experiences that I had as a student, I really loved event planning and I loved concerts. And so in that, people, would in conversation would talk about, oh, like, how do you not get nervous in front of meeting celebrities during speaking engagements and different things? But it's just like, when it's your job to bring them to campus, you recognize that you have the power in that. And so you don't have to be shy around those people, because you recognize that they put their shoes on one foot at a time, just like you do. And so it builds a level of confidence in your ability to say whatever it is that you have to say.
I love that. Thank you both for sharing. I love the 738-55 rule too. I'm going to have to look that up. Another aspect of communication as a counselor that we were taught, or that I was taught and that I still use today, is reading the room and listening for cues. Sometimes we can miss a whole message because we are not paying attention to what's right before us that may not necessarily be said, and vice versa. Sometimes someone can say something, but because we have already prepared the response, we didn't hear exactly what they have said. And so, as an example, when you walk into your classroom, sometimes just by looking at your teacher or reading her energy or paying attention to the facial expressions that are on his or her face, sometimes that will give you an indication as to what that person's mood is, or where they are mentally, or what's going on in their head and heart. And so it takes skill, it takes patience, and it takes a very special gift to be able to pay attention to the things that are not always said and spoken, but also derive from it or get from it an indication of how you are to proceed. And so it's important that as we all grow, and it's something that even as adults we still have to do, but as you all, as young people, continue to grow, I want you to think about, when you walk into your classroom, I want you to take the moment to step back and just observe what you see. Listen with your ears, but also with your heart, because sometimes it takes a very special type of listening to be able to hear the feelings of other people. Not only see that there's something going on their face, but sometimes you'll receive an indication from the spirit to say, so and so is not happy today. Something happened, and maybe you're the one to cheer them up because you have that special ability to hear or see that something is not right with them, even though they've not said anything. So, reading the room and listening sometimes for what's not said.
Thank you for that, Ms. Allen. I very much agree. I feel like, as experts in our fields and as, directors and overseers of teams, sometimes we get caught up in scripts and in the day-to-day kind of mundane parts of our careers and jobs. And we don't be scared of the change up, the switch up. Sometimes you got to switch things up. You got to try something different, do something different to be able to appeal to people that don't necessarily feel compelled to listen to you or don't feel seen and heard. Oftentimes as a kid, I was, people would think, oh, he's so shy. I'm not shy. I'm listening. I'm observing. I'm watching. I'm reading rooms. I'm sitting in the back and I'm picking up on all of it. Learning like little small things like people's favorite colors and, people's favorite scents and fragrances. People just want to be seen and heard and felt and feel like you know them, you see them even without having conversation. So sometimes the best way to communicate is to not verbally say anything at all.
Yeah, I was just going to add to be a professional scholar for the rest of your life. I tell people, hey, what's your profession? Professional scholar, meaning you are going to sit in a posture of humility. That when you go into a room, Mr. Mayor said, that you're there to learn from people, because language is an art, and so you don't get to determine how the other person interprets what you said, how you said it, and why you even said it, right? So cultural competence is huge. And my role working across northern states, southern states, West Coast, the different schools, there's different culture state to state, city to city, east side, west side, north side. I mean, when you go to these places, you have to be a professional scholar. And I grew up in Florida my whole life, but when I had our Michigan schools, the swag is a little bit different. The weather is different. I have to be in a position to be humble and to learn and to consume what people are telling me. So that listening piece is huge. But be humble and learn, because we will never master culture. It's ever evolving. And so just remembering language is an art, and we don't get to determine how people interpret what we're putting out there.
If I could just piggyback off of that a little bit, because when I was looking at that question, I really wanted to consider other people's perspectives. And you mentioned being able to look at different, like cultural competence is like a huge thing. And I know a lot of people haven't been able to, say, travel outside of the country, or even sometimes leave their hometown, depending on what situations and circumstances are, but also making sure that your perspective is not the only perspective that is important. You find yourself as educators doing a lot of troubleshooting and trying to understand where the student is coming from. And you don't necessarily want to fix, or, you're not going to find a solution to whatever they are bringing to you, but you want to understand, you want to comprehend, you want to hear from their perspectives and include them in whatever that solution might be. Just because I'm the expert or the educator doesn't mean that I have all the answers, or they have to do what I say do. We're going to work this thing out together. Their perspective is huge in helping us collaborate to their success.
I
Ms. Luckett,
love
me and you are
that.
on the, oh, I'm so sorry.
Go right ahead. You're good.
We're on the exact same page when I looked at that question. The first thing that came to my mind, especially as a life coach, is in communication, there are different perspectives. And regardless of what you say, and with your best intentions to say it the way you want it to be received, the person on the other side of that communication has their own perspective, their own life experiences that they bring to that conversation. And so one of the things as an educator is that you have to, one, understand that, and two, be intentional about being open to how they interpret it without yourself getting offended, or if they take it the wrong way, being upset. If they respond back to you in a way that you don't necessarily like, how are you going to react or respond? And there's a part of communication that is premeditated. My favorite word on communication is intentionality. You have to be intentional about what's coming out of your mouth, because that's what you can control. And when I say mouth, I don't just mean verbally talking. Like others have said, it's the way you present it non-verbally. It's your tone that you use when you're typing emails or any type of communication that there is. You can control what you do, and you have to be intentional about that, and then stay humble and be open to them responding the way they received it.
That is so good. So you all are kind of leaning into my next question. I think I heard this tone of empathy in how you approach people. So I want to know, what character traits do you think are necessary as educators in your respective rights with the people that you serve, with your coworkers? What are some character traits that you know you have to embody and possess to be effective and to hit the mission every single time?
I'll start off with this one because this is so important. Self-awareness. because in an environment where a lot of times when we're trying to learn about different people, it's important for you to first know who you are. You need to know whose you are. And you need to understand that your experience might be different than someone else's experience. And that doesn't make either experience right or wrong. It just means that you have different experiences. It means that sometimes when you're talking with your friends, you need to be aware enough when you say something that you thought you were being funny and they took it as shade. You have to be aware of that to be able to understand, when you're answering questions or how those things work or what you're good at and what you might need assistance with. Understanding that will give you the roadmap to know how to assist and how to start building those help-seeking behaviors. But it's also the very first step in multicultural competence. Like when we're talking about traveling all over the world or whether or not you're traveling across the street, it's important for you to know who you are, where you come from, and how that might impact how others see you and how you see the world.
Yeah, and I think Charmaine did a great job of hitting on this earlier, but really committing to being a lifelong learner, especially in the field of education. It is ever evolving, just like life. But we see oftentimes, especially in education, when systems begin to change. Oftentimes, that's when we see kind of this mass exodus because people are really hesitant to want to adapt to these new systems and the way that they operate. And also, too, there's a great phrase that I always kind of hold with me, that a teacher learns twice, because you have to learn it to teach it, but then you also should learn again from your students because they have perspectives that they're bringing from what you're teaching, right? And so really being able to always being willing to sit in the seat of a student and being willing to learn from those whom you may be instructing. While you may be the expert, you are not the only student within the classroom setting. And so that's across the board, even for somebody like me that's in a supplemental education role, always being mindful of some of the changes that are happening and being willing to be informed by what is going on in the education arena. I have the very unique position of being this kind of bridge between what's going on in the workforce or in the community. So being able to make sure that both sides are informed when it comes to some of the things that the workforce is sharing that they need education to really be focused on because of the need, but then also the workforce being aware of some of the systems that are currently in place in education that may or may not be able to meet the demands in the workforce. And so, that's a good example, again, of kind of being in that seat of being a student and being a lifelong learner.
Walter, I really like that example because I always feel like I'm learning a third time. Like, I feel like I'm just learning so many things as it relates to everything that you said, but also putting myself in the position of the student, because I'm a first generation student. I was Pell eligible. I'm Black. I'm female. Like, I have all these layers that I possess as social identities that the students have as well. So I feel like I'm learning so that I can help them be successful. But the part of the self-awareness part, when you think about the DEI space and everything that's changing at our universities, our workplaces, with legislation, you have to make sure that you are okay before you address the students and how they're feeling with everything that's going on. I think self-awareness and self-care is really huge with, our passion, our compassion, our empathy for what we do, but we have to be well also.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Nikki. Man, we're all weaving in together with this one. For definitely my area of work with all of our scholars, really 99% of our scholars are in that low income bracket. And really research just shows that the average scholar who has safety and security, maybe have parents in the home, you're not concerned about where your next meal is going to come from, they receive more of a 6-to-1 ratio of positivity. Where scholars who grow up in low income environments, a lot of times they receive the opposite. 6 negative responses to every 1 positive. So when I'm working with teachers and leaders, they have to know that for every correction, a corrective behavior we speak to a scholar, now you got to make 6 positive deposits, because the child already struggles with self-concept when you're constantly living in a space in place of stress. So really, we have to be the character trait in my field. You have to be trauma informed and trauma responsive, because trauma shows up in our schools every day, and it could show up as shyness. It could show us. So if you're a teacher that, well, talk to me, tell me what's happening, maybe that scholar isn't ready to talk, right? We have to have so many skills in our toolkit because trauma is showing up daily. And we have teachers that definitely need to know the diversity of how trauma shows up, what it looks, feels, and sounds like, and to, in addition to your own self-care, you want to make sure that you don't have a narrow lens about what trauma looks like when it shows up in your classroom or in the building.
Charmaine, I actually want you to expound a little bit. That's research that she shared about the deposits of negative to positive, right? So this is just for our parents. I want you to kind of speak to parents. If you have a negative outlook when you're talking to your student, they're struggling, you ain't gonna never get this. Those things, it takes about 6 positives to just counter it, not to undo it, not to get rid of it, just to counter. So if you're constantly pouring negative words into your student, you're gonna have to do a lot of rebuilding in the future. So Charmaine, can you just maybe expound a little bit more on that before the next person?
Okay, yeah, something that we usually train our teachers is on positive phrasing. So really to remove words like don't, won't, can't, shouldn't, you replace them with the desired behavior, desired outcome, and that is a specific strategy. So if a scholar is screaming or running down the hall, we say, thank you for being a leader. Thank you for walking down the hall. Or we use if, then, when, then. Well, when you lower your voice, then I'll be able to answer your question. So just short strategies, if, then, when, then. Or if a scholar is in crisis or distress, we may say, hey, would you like to talk about this now or later? Would you like to talk about this in public or in private? These are same strategies we can use as parents, but removing also all absolute words, which are biased. Every time I look at you, you're out of your seat. If a scholar is in their seat one time and you looked over there, you just lied. You lost all credibility with that scholar and you have possibly damaged that relationship. So we remove absolute words for relationship building, meaning every time, never, you always. These are things that are harmful to relationships. So these are just some strategies and things to do. Removing negated words from our vocabulary, speak to the desired behavior, desired outcome, and then removing absolute words and negated words.
I'll come in after that. A couple of things. I'll go back to Mr. Jennings when you said that we all are learning in a situation, in a conversation. One of my hashtags is I teach, we learn, because as the educator, even though we are in the position to be the knower of the knowledge and to give that to the students or whoever we're talking to, again, to be open to the fact that I'm going to learn something in this situation too, and not just more about what I'm teaching them, not just on a deeper level, but they bring something to the table that I can learn from also. And then with you, Ms. Jennings, what you had me write down as you were speaking was speak to the highest version of the child. So when we talk to kids, and kids, I'm saying this to you too, because this is for you when you talk to anybody in any situation, as long as you speak to the negativity that's happening in the moment or the negativity from how you feel in the moment, it's only going to make the situation worse. It's not going to move it forward. It's not going to progress. But when you speak to the higher version, and by that, I mean, I see this right now, but where do I want it to go in the future? What can I say in this moment to move it in a positive direction? I've seen too many times where teachers in my building have berated a kid for something that they did because the situation, the intensity is too high for the teacher to handle. And that's a whole nother conversation in itself of self-regulation for teachers, but they choose to lash out on the student. And that doesn't help. So I love the suggestions you gave, Charmaine, for how to use that more positive language instead of always defaulting to the negative.
And I wanted to follow up on that, and a character skill that is very helpful. I'm going to try to use both the counseling as well as being an administrator as well. In counseling, there's a difference between listening to someone and hearing them. We think those are the same. Those are two different things. If I hear you, if I listen to you, I'm listening to you audibly with my ear. The way that you know that I have heard you is when I repeat back to you what I think I heard, then you know that you have been heard, that I actively listened. So what I do a lot of times in counseling, when the person finishes speaking, I will say back to them, so what I think you are saying or you felt, or when you said this, am I correct or not? So people need to know that they have been heard. A lot of times people listen, but they don't really hear what the person's saying. So you have to let them know that I've heard you. And the way that you do that is repeating back to them what you think you have heard them say.
That's so good. Next person, go right ahead. Did we all go? Okay. Well, I'll jump in with the next question because we're actually coming to the end of our time together. My next question is about mentors and the importance of mentors. So I would love for you to take a moment to tell me, do you feel mentors are a good support as you are becoming a more well-rounded professional? And then also, if you can think of anyone, we'd love to hear an example of a mentor that you had or currently have that has impacted your life.
I'll talk about the fact that I am a mentor and what I've seen from the mostly girls. I specialize with teenage girls, that I've seen from them and what they've told me. I started 18 and a half years ago in education. 5 years prior to that, I was in sports medicine at Valdosta State University in their program to be an athletic trainer. And what I caught myself doing was not paying attention to my trainer, who was teaching me how to wrap ankles, because I was too busy talking to the water girls because they were telling me about what was happening in school and asking me for advice on their problems and things like that. And that's kind of how I fell into the education career. As God has honed and developed that skill in me that just kind of came out naturally. Girls, he's graced me to have girls come back and actually tell me exactly what it's done for them. And they've told me that you taught me how to be a woman. You helped me through some of the toughest times that I was going through in high school. Even the ones right now that I started out with earlier are in their mid-20s and they still call. They still need that connection to a trusted adult, to somebody who they know believes in them and believes in what their capabilities are and what they're able to do. And also that has the Holy Spirit's guidance on how to guide them and how to facilitate them in their life. And so I believe that mentorship is invaluable for everybody. It does not negate that things are going to happen. You cannot avoid life, but what it does is that it helps students and people in general navigate it a little better.
I'd like to add to that. I think we're all benefactors in some way of a mentor, be it our parents or our aunties or wannabe aunties and cousins. Everyone, I would like to believe, have had a hand in leading us to this point in our lives. And so, yes, mentors are critical. I do highly recommend and support mentorship and am a mentor to young people here and have served in many capacities over the years. But I once heard a quote saying, and it said that relationships are the real currency of life, which means, young people, is that you can want or money and fame and fortunes are they can only go so far. But if you have a good network of people by your side who love and support you and pour into you, you will never be in want. I think that the greatest misnomer or the disservice that we do to ourselves often is that we don't know how to maintain relationships well so that we're able to continue to benefit from them. But mentorship is one of those things that if we accept and if we are willing to receive what is available to us, they will forever be a blessing to you. And so, to all of the young people, I ask that you not look down on people when they try to help you. Don't think that they don't know anything, or if you're not wanting to hear it at that time, that they can't benefit you. That is not true. Even as an adult, I have mentors. In college, I had mentors. Growing up in middle and high school, I had mentors. So mentors are designed by God because we are created to be in relationship with people. And there is no way we would be where we are or to this point in our lives without someone pouring into us. Whether they had the title of a mentor or not, they were positioned and positioned by design to pour into our lives to get us to this point. And so mentors are invaluable, and I hope and pray that we all maintain that level of interest and willingness to give back, to be a mentor, but also to be mentored, because there's always something to learn.
So one thing I'll add, I think it's important that even in the conversation we're thinking, when we hear mentor, we think some older adult who's known like all of these things, but you can be a mentor and you can be a mentor for your friends. And it's important. I always thought about the aspect of iron sharpens iron. So that means it doesn't, it's not as impactful for you to go to all of these enrichment programs and then you go hang out with the same friends who don't want anything out of life. You have got to surround yourself with people who will speak life into you and who will encourage you and who will correct you and call you like, hey, like, you was wrong for that. Like, there, it's so important. And that's really what a mentorship relationship can be. So it's not always one-sided, it can be multiple-sided. And then don't think that one mentor is supposed to give you everything that you need, because you might have a mentor at church, you might have a mentor at school, you might have one in another community organization, because all of these pieces, just like people talk about, like, that's social currency, because it's not just who you know, but who they know. And the more that you can get in your mind the fact that it's not always someone pouring into you, but also who can you pour into? Because sometimes we'll learn what we should be grateful for by us understanding that influence and thinking about mentorship is just influence. And you want to make sure that you're very careful about the people that you allow to influence your life, because they will, in fact, influence your life.
Yeah, I want to add to, man, every speaker is just phenomenal. But I definitely had a mentor. She was significantly older than me. This woman was the headmaster of a private school I worked at for 6 years. And I just thought the woman was just wild and all out there. But she was a clinical psychologist. She was the headmaster of the school. She believed in what she did, and she changed my mind on something that really I didn't know my culture was interrupting. And so it took me to a new phase in my career, which led me to do what I do today. And her name is Dr. Schwartzman. But I realized that psychology is in everything that we do. But she combined education with psychology and neuroscience. And she helped us to understand, every faculty member on her campus, she needed us to know that all behavior is communication. And it was up to us to learn how to look at behavior as communication. And so for me growing up, I had those stigmas that, okay, if you behave bad, then you bad. That's your diagnosis. You just bad. Okay. And she was like, no, the frontal lobe of the brain is not even developed yet. And the problem solving and decision making skills. And so when I tell you she took my career to a new level, none of our career fields are in isolation. And so as a mentor, she pushed me to new realms. And so, yes, we all have to be humble enough to know that we will come to the end of ourselves and we will need mentors to push us. And that woman was iron, y'all. And to this day, now I'm helping educators to step outside of the culture, the stigmas of, oh, well, this child bad and you good because you're compliant and no, all behavior is communication. And it is up to us to ask ourselves, how am I reading this language? Do I have a biased lens? This scholar that's making my job a lot easier, I like them, but I don't like this one over here. People feel that, they see that, right? So again, as a mentor, she pushed the envelope to help me see that all of our career fields are connected and we need each other.
I just want to say briefly, I want to encourage the parents as well to have mentors, especially because we go through so many different phases of life, and whether somebody's been there before, and we might all have different, paths and ways that we got to where we're going, but we don't have to struggle alone. We don't have to figure things out alone. I just think about some of like when my daughter went to college, I'm like, oh my God, what is this? How am I going to cope? But somebody has been there before, and we need to help each other along the way in different paths. So yes, students, you should get mentors, but I believe the parents should too, so that you can have somebody to support you along the way as well.
And I wanted to add to that as well. My mentor, one of my many mentors, all of us have had mentors, and you heard us say that. But my mentor was my boss, actually, like Charmaine. And it was amazing what she did. She set aside every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, I won't forget that, for years to sit and just talk with me about what was going on. So you have to be intentional about mentoring. And one thing I will say to you, students and to parents, always have someone that you are bringing along that you are mentoring. Have someone who's a peer who is holding you accountable and helping you. And then always have someone older who is pouring into you. So if you have a younger person you're helping, a peer who is working with you, and someone older who is pouring into you, always have those three legs of mentorship. That will be wonderful for you.
Robert, you got anything?
Yeah, I was gonna say, actually, one of my current mentors is my boss as well. And I think it's ironic that this is the first time I didn't go looking for a mentor. I think that sometimes we forget mentorship should be organic. One of my mentors says, if you're not big enough to serve, if you think that being of service is too big for you, well, you can't do that. That's too small for you. You're not big enough to be a leader. And I think mentorship is leadership. And I think if you put yourself in a mode and a spirit of being of service, mentorship will find you. It should be organic. It should be heart-led. You don't have to go looking for this perfect mentor. One of the things I talk about with my wife is that, the higher up we go in these industries and the vast jobs that we all hold on this panel, is there aren't very many people that look like us that do those things. And then there's this spirit of loneliness where you don't find other people who you can connect with, because your employees see you as this leader, and they don't necessarily talk to you in that way. So who can you be poured into by? Because like in my position, I'm 2 people away from the president, and who do I talk to? Like there aren't many people that do what I do at the level I do it. And so something I had to do is find people that weren't in my industry, or people that I wouldn't necessarily see myself being mentored by, but they had things where we had commonalities. There were things that I was inspired by. And sometimes you don't even tell your mentors that they're mentors to you. They don't necessarily have to know that they're doing that for you. And I think about my walk is that I hope I'm doing the same thing, where I'm operating in a way where people are being mentored by me and I don't even know it. I don't want to have to put on an air to look like what you think a mentor should look like. You just be a good person, be a good human.
I love all of this. This has been a really rich conversation. We've actually come about to the end. I wanted to give you all, if you are interested, if someone from our audience has questions specifically for you, and you don't mind connecting, if you have an email or a general number or social media, LinkedIn, let me know and I'll throw it in the chat. And you don't have to share anything. If they want to get in contact with you and you don't have anything that you want to share, you can feel free, audience, to email us, littlepeopleserving@gmail.com, and we'll communicate to whatever speaker you have any questions for. But if you have a contact that you don't mind sharing, let me know so I can throw it in the chat.
Absolutely. You can reach me at coachvaleriewilson@gmail.com.
Okay. Let me actually, anybody else?
I just threw mine in the chat.
I'm trying to copy and
Mhm.
paste.
Yeah.
Give me one moment. Okay.
Certainly, I'm open and willing to support further.
Okay.
I also put mine in the chat, and I gave my personal email. But while you're doing that, one encouraging thing that I will say that wasn't said when it comes to mentorship is don't always be afraid to seek out someone who doesn't look like you, because sometimes you might need to borrow someone's privilege, and for them to speak your name in rooms that you're not invited into, whether or not that be, like we said, a message to the students or to their parents. And so really making sure that there are groups of folks that can pour into you from a lot of different areas. Just make sure it's someone you can trust. And obviously all of the folks that are adding their information in the chat, we can definitely be a resource to you, but don't forget about the folks who are also in your backyard who want to help and support you and your children.
And I put my email in the chat as the Smith Delois 465 if you'd like to contact me. And for the parents and the students, just kind of log this away. One thing I used to do at college level was to teach study skills, and especially wanted to say that to Jordan. She's at 9th grade, critical at this point. So even before that, those are some critical skills. So if you'd like some help with that, just let me know.
Thank you.
I'd
Any
like to do a
final
plug
words?
while we're on here for Little People Service Organization. We actually have one of their scholars who graduated and is at Livingstone College on a full scholarship this year.
Yes.
She's doing amazing, Miss Christine Williams. So I just wanted to do that plug for Dr. Anthony's organization.
Thank you. And we just talked to her on Wednesday. We have something called pre-employability skills training, where we're teaching soft skills for our students to learn how to stand in front of people and speak and present and whatnot. And she was a part of it. We were focusing on setting SMART goals, and she kind of shared a little bit of her journey as a first year freshman and first semester. And she said it's a different transition. Like, it's a really big transition. It's different, but she's doing her best, and we know she's going to succeed. So I'm very proud of her. Very proud of her. Thank you. All right. Any more final words from anybody? No, y'all quiet now. Okay.
Yeah, no. Before we leave, I'd be remiss if I didn't say to the young people who are considering going in education, I believe that focus on relationships is one of the number one things that you can do to help yourself become the best educator, because you're helping yourself become the best version of you as well. So think about those times when you had teachers that you didn't necessarily like, but also think about the ones that you loved and what was the difference between them two. The ones you loved, you had a connection, they built a relationship with you. So be that person that you always wanted your teachers to be for you.
And I would say too, moving forward, the profession of education is one of the protected professions in light of artificial intelligence. So make sure you look at that. That's one of the protected professions that's not likely to go away.
I would like to say on behalf of the panel, Dr. Anthony, thank you all and your organization so much for having this, for us to be able to come and even learn from each other on this panel today. So again, thank you for the invitation, and I am excited, and I'm sure those who were on this panel would share and just saying that we have enjoyed this time. So thank you for creating this space and opportunity.
Thank you so much for being a part. You guys hang out. I'm going to end our stream. I also am going to fix the emails because I tried to copy and paste them, but they kind of ran together. So I'll post them on our page in a more understandable manner. Okay. But I want to say thank you all for tuning in. Please, please, please make sure you're following us to keep up with all that we have going on. October is a really full month. Our career exploration for October is actually going to be an experiential learning opportunity. We are going into a courtroom. Judge Shayla Lee has opened her courtroom to us. We're going to have a lesson on persuasive argument, and then we will engage in a roundtable with Judge Lee, and then we'll also have a mock trial. I'm really excited about that. And we want to kind of get our students in the mind frame of maybe you're a future lawyer, a future judge, so let's start preparing now for later. I want to say thank you all for joining us and tuning in. Hit the share button if you haven't already. Like this, all of the things that you do in social media, and you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. And thank you again, Jordan. You did a great job.
You did a really good job. That's my girl.
Good evening to everyone.